A 19-year-old black student just solved a mathematical equation that had stumped professors for over 200 years. And what happened next will make your blood boil. But here's what they don't want you to know about this story. My name is Mark, and I've been documenting real black excellence stories for over 5 years. I've seen patterns that most people miss, patterns of brilliance being overlooked, dismissed, and stolen. Today's story is about mathematical genius, but it's really about something much deeper. It's about a system designed to make us invisible, even when we're standing right in front of them, changing the world. If you're new here, this channel is where we dive deep into authentic black experiences, the triumphs they don't celebrate, the struggles they don't acknowledge, and the excellence they can't ignore. We don't just tell stories, we reveal truth. And today's truth, it's going to shake you to your core. Here's what I'm going to show you in the next 2 hours. First, the incredible story of how a young black mathematician cracked a problem that had defeated the greatest minds in academia. Second, the shocking response from the very professors who should have been celebrating this breakthrough. And third, this is the part that will make you understand everything. Why this story represents a pattern that's been repeated for centuries in our community. But here's the thing, if you don't understand the deeper meaning behind this mathematical miracle, you're missing the real message. And that's exactly what the academic establishment wants. They want you to see just another smart student, not a revolution in the making. Let me paint you a picture. It's a Tuesday morning at one of America's most prestigious universities, the kind of place where brilliance is supposed to be recognized and celebrated. But as we're about to see, brilliance only gets recognized when it comes in the right package. Our story begins in a differential equations classroom. You know, the kind of math that makes grown adults cry. The professor, Dr. Richardson, has been teaching for 37 years. He's published papers, won awards, and considers himself an expert in mathematical theory. On this particular morning, he decides to challenge his students with what he calls an impossible problem. But here's what Dr. Richardson doesn't know. Sitting in the third row, taking notes in a worn composition book, is a young woman who's about to rewrite everything he thinks he knows about impossible. Her name is Aisha Williams, and she's about to prove that the only thing impossible is the limits people try to place on black excellence. But wait, there's something else you need to know before we dive deeper into this story. Now, before I tell you about that life-changing Tuesday morning, you need to understand who Aisha Williams is. Because her story doesn't start in that university classroom. It starts in East Cleveland, Ohio, in a neighborhood where people don't expect mathematical miracles. Aisha grew up in a single-parent household with her mother, Patricia, who worked double shifts as a nurse's aide just to keep the lights on. Patricia never went to college, but she had something more valuable than any degree. She had vision. She saw something special in her daughter, even when teachers couldn't see past the worn sneakers and second-hand clothes. You see, Aisha discovered her love for numbers at age 7, not in some fancy prep school, but at the kitchen table with her grandmother's recipe cards. While other kids were playing video games, Aisha was calculating ingredient ratios and figuring out how to multiply recipes for church potlucks. Her grandmother, Miss Ruby, used to say, "Baby, God gave you a gift with them numbers. Don't let nobody tell you different." But here's where the story gets real, because talent without opportunity is just frustration waiting to happen. Aisha's elementary school had outdated textbooks and overcrowded classrooms. Her math teacher, Mrs. Henderson, was doing her best, but she was teaching 43 kids with resources meant for 20. When Aisha started solving problems faster than Mrs. Henderson could write them on the board, you know what happened? They didn't celebrate her gift, they questioned it. "Are you sure you did this yourself? Did someone help you at home? the same questions that have been asked of brilliant black minds for generations. But Aisha's mother Patricia wasn't having it. She knew what she was seeing, even if she couldn't explain the mathematics behind it. So she did what black mothers have been doing forever: she fought. She fought for her daughter to be placed in advanced classes. She fought for recognition. She fought for opportunity. And this is where it gets interesting, because the system tried to put Aisha in a box, but you can't contain genius. When they said she wasn't ready for advanced mathematics, she taught herself calc. Ulu's using library books and YouTube videos. When they said she needed more preparation, she was already solving college-level problems on scratch paper. Fast forward to high school, and Aisha is taking every advanced math course available. But even then, the pattern continues. Guidance counselors suggest practical career paths. Teachers praise her work but somehow never nominate her for academic competitions. It's like she's brilliant enough to notice, but not brilliant enough to invest in. But here's what they didn't count on: Aisha had her mother's determination and her grandmother's wisdom. While classmates were worrying about prom dates, Aisha was entering mathematical competitions on her own. While others were planning spring break, she was submitting research papers to academic journals. The breakthrough came during her senior year when a visiting professor from the university happened to see one of her research papers. Professor Martinez couldn't believe what he was reading. A 17-year-old had solved a problem that had been puzzling graduate students. For the first time in Aisha's academic life, someone in authority wasn't just recognizing her talent, they were actively fighting for it. That's how Aisha Williams, the girl from East Cleveland who learned mathematics at her grandmother's kitchen table, ended up in Dr. Richardson's differential equations class. But here's what nobody understood. They weren't just admitting a student. They were admitting a revolution. And that revolution was about to announce itself on a Tuesday morning that would change everything. But first, let me tell you about the equation that had been driving mathematicians crazy for 2 centuries. Now, let me break down this impossible equation in a way that'll make sense, even if mathematics makes you break out in a cold sweat. We're talking about the Riemann-Euler convergence problem, a mathematical puzzle that's been taunting brilliant minds since 1823. Picture this. Imagine you're trying to find a pattern in something that appears completely random. Not just any pattern, but a pattern that could revolutionize how we understand physics, engineering, and even economics. This equation wasn't just academic theory. Solving it could change how we build bridges, design computer algorithms, and understand the universe itself. For 200 years, the greatest mathematical minds had taken their shot at this problem. We're talking about people whose names are on theorems taught in universities worldwide. Nobel Prize winners, mathematical legends, and every single one of them had walked away defeated. The equation itself looks innocent enough on paper, just a series of symbols and numbers. But those symbols represent relationships so complex that even computers struggled to process all the variables involved. But here's why this equation was so important, and why Dr. Richardson was using it to humble his students. Solving the Riemann-Euler convergence problem wasn't just about mathematical bragging rights. This equation held the key to understanding infinite series, mathematical concepts that govern everything from the orbit of satellites to the flow of internet data. Industries had invested millions trying to crack this code. Tech companies wanted it for algorithm development. NASA needed it for space exploration calculations. Financial institutions saw it as the holy grail for market prediction models. We're talking about an equation worth potentially billions of dollars in applications. And yet, for 2 centuries, it remained unsolved. It became a kind of mathematical Mount Everest. Everyone wanted to conquer it, but it had defeated every expedition. Some of the greatest minds in history had spent their entire careers trying to find the solution, only to retire in defeat. Dr. Richardson knew this history when he wrote the equation on the whiteboard that Tuesday morning. In his mind, he was giving his students a humbling experience, showing them the limits of mathematical possibility. So there's Dr. Richardson, standing in front of his differential equations class with 37 years of teaching experience and the confidence that comes from decades of academic success. He's faced thousands of students, published dozens of papers, and earned the respect of his peers. The classroom is typical of most university math courses: fluorescent lights, white boards covered in equations from previous classes, and that particular smell of dry erase markers and academic anxiety. Students are scattered across the room, some frantically taking notes, others already looking defeated by the complexity of the coursework. Dr. Richardson begins his usual Tuesday routine, but today he has something special planned. He turns to the whiteboard and starts writing slowly, deliberately, making sure every symbol is perfectly formed. The equation grows across the board, and you can feel the energy in the room shift as NTS realize they're looking at something far beyond their usual coursework. This, Dr. Richardson announces with the dramatic flair that comes from years of lecturing, is the Riemann-Euler convergence problem. It has stumped the greatest mathematical minds for over 200 years. I don't expect any of you to solve it. I'm showing it to you so you understand the kind of problems that true mathematical genius tackles. But here's what Dr. Richardson doesn't notice. While most students are staring at the equation with fear or confusion, one student in the third row is staring with something else entirely: recognition, understanding, and something that looks almost like excitement. That student is Aisha Williams, and she's about to prove that sometimes the greatest mathematical minds aren't who you expect them to be. But what happens next? This is where the story gets really interesting. Now, while Dr. Richardson is explaining why this equation is impossible, something extraordinary is happening in Aisha's mind. She's not seeing an impossible problem, she's seeing patterns, connections, relationships that somehow, inexplicably, make sense to her. You have to understand, this is a 19-year-old student who's supposed to be learning basic differential equations. She shouldn't even have the mathematical foundation to comprehend what she's looking at. But genius doesn't follow syllabi or course prerequisites. Genius sees what others can't see. Aisha starts writing in her composition book, not taking notes on Dr. Richardson's lecture, but working. She's testing approaches, trying different mathematical strategies, following instincts that she can't even explain to herself. Her pen is moving faster than her conscious thought, like she's downloading solutions from somewhere beyond normal understanding. The other students around her are still struggling to copy the equation correctly from the board. But Aisha, she's 3 steps ahead, seeing possibilities that hadn't occurred to mathematicians with decades more experience. And then it happens. 23 minutes into Dr. Richardson's lecture about mathematical impossibility, Aisha Williams sees it. The solution isn't hiding in complex calculations or advanced theorems. It's sitting right there in the fundamental relationships between the variables, relationships that everyone else had overlooked because they were looking for something complicated. Sometimes the most profound discoveries come from seeing the obvious that everyone else missed. While mathematicians had been trying to attack this problem with increasingly sophisticated techniques, the answer required going back to basics, but seeing those basics with fresh eyes. Aisha's hand is shaking slightly as she writes down the solution, not because she's uncertain, but because she realizes what she's just accomplished. She's holding the answer to a question that has puzzled humanity for 2 centuries. She's 19 years old, sitting in a classroom in Ohio, and she's just made mathematical history. But here's the thing about breakthrough moments: they're often followed by doubt. Aisha looks at her work again, checking and rechecking. This can't be right, she thinks. If the solution was this elegant, why hadn't anyone else found it? Now, here's where the story reveals something profound about the Black experience in academic spaces. Aisha has just solved one of mathematics' greatest mysteries, but her first instinct isn't celebration, it's self-doubt. Why? Because she's been conditioned by a lifetime of having her intelligence questioned, her insights dismissed, her capabilities underestimated. She's thinking, maybe I made an error. Maybe I don't understand the problem correctly. Maybe I'm missing something obvious that makes this solution impossible. These are the thoughts of someone who's been told in 1,000 subtle ways that she doesn't belong in spaces of mathematical excellence. But then she checks her work again, and again. Each time the solution holds up. The mathematics is sound. The logic is flawless. The answer is not only correct, it's elegant in its simplicity. Aisha realizes she's facing a moment that will define not just her academic career, but possibly her entire life. She can stay silent, doubt herself, and let this moment pass. Or she can do something that takes incredible courage in academic spaces where Black voices are often dismissed. She can speak up. The clock on the classroom wall shows 9:47 a.m. Dr. Richardson is still explaining why the equation is unsolvable. Students are dutifully taking notes about mathematical impossibility, and Aisha Williams is sitting in the third row, holding the answer to a 200-year-old question, trying to find the courage to raise her hand. What happens next will shock you, but more importantly, it will reveal a pattern that's been repeated throughout history whenever Black excellence confronts institutional expectation. Yes. At 9:48 a.m. on that Tuesday morning, Aisha Williams makes a decision that will change everything. Her hand slowly rises into the air. Dr. Richardson doesn't notice at first. He's deep into his explanation of why mathematical genius requires decades of preparation and institutional training. But other students start to notice. There's something different about the way Aisha's sitting, something confident and determined that wasn't there at the beginning of class. Dr. Richardson. Aisha's voice cuts through his lecture. The professor pauses, slightly annoyed at the interruption. In his experience, student questions during his advanced demonstrations usually reveal fundamental misunderstandings. He's prepared to patiently explain why whatever approach she's thinking of won't work. Yes, miss. He glances at his roster. Miss Williams, I think I have the solution. The classroom goes completely silent. Not the engaged silence of students paying attention, but the uncomfortable silence of second-hand embarrassment. Several students exchange glances, the kind of looks that say, did she really just claim to solve the impossible equation? Dr. Richardson's expression shifts from mild annoyance to what can only be described as academic condescension. He's seen this before, overconfident students who think they've cracked problems that have defeated far greater minds. In his experience, these moments require gentle correction and a reality check about the nature of true mathematical difficulty. Miss Williams, he says with the patronizing tone that academics have perfected over centuries, I appreciate your enthusiasm, but this equation has challenged the greatest mathematical minds for over 200 years. Perhaps you'd like to share what you think you've found, and we can discuss why that approach won't work. The emphasis on think you found isn't accidental. Neither is the assumption that her approach won't work. This is the academic equivalent of patting someone on the head and telling them to sit down while the adults handle the real thinking. But Aisha doesn't sit down. Instead, she stands up, composition book in hand, and starts walking toward the front of the classroom. Now, this is where the story gets powerful, because what happens next isn't just about mathematics. It's about courage. It's about a young Black woman refusing to be dismissed, even when every institutional signal tells her to doubt herself. Aisha reaches the whiteboard and starts writing. not frantically or nervously, but with the steady confidence of someone who knows exactly what they're doing. She begins to lay out her solution, step by methodical step. Dr. Richardson watches with the patience of someone waiting for a student to realize their error. The other students watch with a mixture of curiosity and discomfort. Nobody wants to witness someone's public academic humiliation. But as Aisha continues writing, something changes in the room. Dr. Richardson's expression shifts from patronizing patience to focused attention. He starts following her logic, expecting to find the flaw that will gently correct her overconfidence. Instead, he finds something else entirely. He finds mathematical reasoning that's not just correct, it's brilliant. Each step builds logically on the previous one. The approach is unconventional but undeniably sound. And slowly, impossibly, he realizes he's watching someone solve a problem that has defeated the greatest minds in mathematics. The silence in the room is no longer uncomfortable, it's electric. Students sense they're witnessing something extraordinary, even if they can't follow all the mathematical details. And Dr. Richardson, he's experiencing something that very few professors ever encounter, the humbling recognition that a student has just surpassed not only his expectations, but his own mathematical capabilities. When Aisha finishes writing and turns around, the look on Dr. Richardson's face tells the whole story. But what he says next, that's where this story reveals everything you need to know about how brilliance is received when it comes from unexpected places. For 37 years, Dr. Richardson has been the smartest person in his classroom. He's the one with the PhD, the published papers, the decades of experience. He's the authority, the expert, the one who determines what's possible and what isn't. But standing in front of his whiteboard is a 19-year-old black student who has just shattered every assumption he's held about mathematical genius. The equation that he used to humble graduate students, the problem that had defeated mathematical legends, has been solved in 23 minutes by someone who shouldn't even have the theoretical foundation to understand it. Dr. Richardson's mouth opens, but no words come out. He's experiencing something that very few academics ever face, the complete restructuring of everything he thought he knew about intelligence, capability, and where brilliance can be found. He approaches the whiteboard following Aisha's work step by step. He's looking for the error, the flaw, the place where youthful overconfidence has overcome mathematical rigor. But every step checks out. Every logical progression is sound. The solution isn't just correct, it's elegant, innovative, and remarkably sophisticated. Meanwhile, the 34 other students in the classroom are witnessing something unprecedented. Most of them can't follow the advanced mathematics, but they can read body language. They can see their professor, the man who grades their papers and determines their academic fate, struggling to process what he's seeing. Some students start whispering among themselves. Others are frantically trying to photograph the whiteboard with their phones, sensing they're witnessing mathematical history. A few are staring at Aisha with the kind of awe usually reserved for celebrities or heroes. But here's what's really happening in that classroom. And this is the part that reveals everything about institutional bias. The same students who would have immediately celebrated if this breakthrough had come from someone who looked the part of mathematical genius are struggling to process excellence from an unexpected source. You can see it in their faces, the cognitive dissonance of witnessing brilliance that doesn't match their preconceptions. Some are genuinely excited and impressed. Others seem almost uncomfortable, as if Aisha's success somehow challenges their own understanding of how academic achievement is supposed to work. But the real crisis isn't happening among the students. It's happening in Dr. Richardson's mind. Because what Aisha has just accomplished represents more than a mathematical breakthrough. It represents a fundamental challenge to everything the academic establishment believes about intelligence, preparation, and who deserves to be taken seriously in intellectual spaces. Think about it. If a 19-year-old from East Cleveland can solve a problem that defeated Harvard PhDs and Cambridge professors, what does that say about the systems designed to identify and nurture mathematical talent? What does it say about the gatekeepers who decide who belongs in advanced academic spaces? Dr. Richardson is facing a choice that every educator eventually encounters but few handle with grace. He can embrace the evidence in front of him and celebrate genuine discovery, or he can find ways to diminish and dismiss what threatens his worldview. The silence stretches on. 30 seconds, a minute, the kind of silence that becomes uncomfortable and then meaningful. Aisha stands by the whiteboard, her solution complete and undeniable, waiting for acknowledgement that may or may not come. And in that silence, you can feel the weight of centuries of Black intellectual achievement being minimized, overlooked, and stolen. You can feel the pattern that's been repeated in laboratories and lecture halls, in research institutions and academic conferences. The pattern of excellence being met not with celebration, but with shock and skepticism. What Dr. Richardson says next will determine not just how this moment unfolds, but how this story gets told. Will this be a story of recognition and celebration, or will it become another example of institutional bias disguised as academic rigor? The answer is about to shock you. After what feels like an eternity, Dr. Richardson finally speaks, but instead of the celebration or acknowledgement you might expect, his first words reveal everything wrong with how academic institutions handle unexpected excellence. "Miss Williams," he says slowly, "this is quite interesting, but I think we need to slow down here. Mathematical proofs require extensive verification. Just because something appears to work doesn't mean it's been properly validated according to academic standards." Listen to those words carefully. Appears to work. Not "this is correct" or "this is remarkable." The solution that had been rigorously developed step by step suddenly appears to work, as if appearance and mathematical reality are somehow different things. But Aisha isn't backing down. "Dr. Richardson, I can walk through each step again if you'd like. The logic is sound, and I've checked the calculations 3 times. "Well," Dr. Richardson replies, "mathematical breakthroughs of this magnitude require peer review and institutional validation. I'm sure you understand that undergraduate coursework doesn't typically involve solving problems of this complexity. Now, here's where you need to pay attention to what's really happening. Dr. Richardson isn't questioning the mathematics, he's questioning the source. He's not saying the solution is wrong. He's saying that solutions don't come from places like this, from people like her. Perhaps," he continues, "you encountered a similar problem in your previous coursework. Or maybe you had assistance developing this approach." The implication is clear and devastating. Rather than accept that genuine mathematical breakthrough has occurred in his classroom, Dr. Richardson is suggesting that Aisha must have cheated, copied, or received help. The possibility that a Black student could independently solve a problem that had defeated mathematical legends is literally inconceivable to him. Other students are starting to shift uncomfortably in their seats. They're witnessing something ugly, the transformation of achievement into suspicion, of excellence into accusation. Some are pulling out their phones, not to capture mathematical history, but to document what's becoming an academic injustice. Aisha's voice remains steady, but you can hear the hurt creeping in. "No, Dr. Richardson. I developed this solution during your lecture. I can explain my reasoning for each step if you'd like." But Dr. Richardson isn't interested in explanations. He's interested in protecting an institutional narrative that makes sense to him, one where mathematical breakthroughs come from proper channels, through proper procedures from properly credentialed people. "I think," he says, "we should move on with today's planned curriculum. Miss Williams, I'd encourage you to submit your work through appropriate academic channels if you believe you've made a significant discovery. But for now, let's return to the material that's actually at your level." Did you catch that? Material that's at your level. The same student who just solved a 200-year-old mathematical mystery is being told to return to problems appropriate for her level. The cognitive dissonance is staggering. As Dr. Richardson erases Aisha's solution from the whiteboard, literally erasing evidence of her breakthrough, something profound happens in that classroom. Students aren't just witnessing mathematical dismissal, they're witnessing institutional racism disguised as academic procedure. But here's what Dr. Richardson doesn't realize: someone in that classroom is recording. Someone else is taking pictures. And Aisha Williams isn't the type of person to quietly accept injustice, even when it comes wrapped in academic authority. What happens next transforms this from a classroom incident into a viral phenomenon that exposes everything wrong with how institutions handle Black excellence. But first, let me tell you about the student who refused to let this moment disappear. In the back row of Dr. Richardson's classroom sits Marcus Chen, a sophomore computer science major who's taking differential equations as an elective. Marcus isn't particularly interested in advanced mathematics, but he's very interested in justice. And what he's witnessing isn't just academic dismissal, it's intellectual theft in real time. While Dr. Richardson is erasing Aisha's solution from the whiteboard, Marcus is doing something that will change everything. He's recording. Not just the erasing, but everything that came before. The solution, the explanation, the dismissal, the implications of cheating, all of it captured in high-definition video. Marcus has seen this pattern before. As an Asian American student, he's experienced his own share of academic stereotyping and assumptions. But what's happening to Aisha goes beyond anything he's witnessed. This isn't just bias. This is the systematic erasure of Black intellectual achievement. When class ends and students start filing out, Marcus approaches Aisha. "I recorded everything," he tells her quietly. "What just happened isn't right and people need to see it." But Marcus isn't the only witness who refuses to stay silent. Sarah Martinez, a mathematics major who actually understood the complexity of what Aisha accomplished, is furious. She's watched her own professors struggle with problems far simpler than the Riemann-Euler convergence, and she knows genius when she sees it. "That was incredible," Sarah tells Aisha after class. "I've been studying mathematics for 4 years, and I've never seen anything like what you just did." Dr. Richardson knows you solved it. He's just too threatened to admit it. Word starts spreading through the mathematics department with the speed that only injustice can generate. Students are talking, sharing photos, forwarding Marcus's video. What was supposed to be quietly dismissed is becoming impossible to ignore. By lunchtime, Aisha equation is trending on campus social media. By evening, it's caught the attention of mathematics professors at other universities. By the end of the week, the video has been viewed over 100,000 times. Here's where the story becomes about more than just one classroom incident. The video that Marcus recorded doesn't just show mathematical genius being dismissed. It shows a pattern that Black students recognize immediately. The condescension, the assumptions, the refusal to acknowledge achievement that doesn't fit institutional expectations. Comments start pouring in from Black students across the country, sharing their own stories of academic dismissal. Graduate students talk about having their research questioned more rigorously than their white peers. Undergraduates describe being assumed to be affirmative action, admits regardless of their qualifications. But something else starts happening too. Mathematicians begin analyzing Aisha's solution. Not just professors, but researchers at major universities, mathematical institutes, and tech companies. And their consensus is unanimous. The solution is not only correct, it's revolutionary. Dr. Elena Vasquez from MIT posts a video response. I've been working on convergence problems for 15 years. What this student accomplished in 23 minutes represents a breakthrough that will reshape how we approach infinite series. This isn't just correct mathematics, it's innovative mathematics. Professor James Wright from Stanford adds, the Riemann-Euler convergence has been the holy grail of mathematical analysis for 2 centuries. If this solution is verified, and preliminary review suggests it is, we're looking at a discovery that will appear in textbooks for generations. But here's what's really powerful about the viral response. It's not just mathematicians recognizing Aisha's genius. It's the broader public finally seeing what happens when black excellence meets institutional bias. And people are angry. The story is picking up mainstream media attention, and suddenly Dr. Richardson and the university find themselves facing questions they can't easily dismiss. Within 72 hours, Aisha Williams' story has exploded beyond university social media into national consciousness. CNN picks it up first, with a segment titled Student Solves Impossible Equation. Professor questions her abilities. The Today Show follows with an interview request. The Washington Post runs a feature story, When Black Excellence Meets Academic Bias. But here's what's fascinating about the media coverage. It's revealing a divide that goes far deeper than just one classroom incident. Traditional academic media is cautious, using phrases like alleged breakthrough and requires further verification. Mainstream media is more direct, focusing on the obvious bias in Dr. Richardson's response. Social media, however, is on fire. Black Twitter has turned Aisha equation into a rallying cry for academic justice. Mathematicians are posting video explanations of why Aisha's solution is revolutionary. Students are sharing their own stories of academic dismissal and bias. The video of the classroom incident has been viewed over 2 million times, not because people understand advanced mathematics, but because they recognize injustice when they see it. The university administration finds itself in crisis management mode. Phone calls are pouring in from donors, alumni, and media outlets. The mathematics department is under scrutiny like never before. And Dr. Richardson, he's gone from respected professor to the face of institutional bias in less than a week. The university's first response is predictably defensive. A spokesperson issues a statement. The university is committed to academic excellence and fairness. All student work is evaluated according to rigorous academic standards, regardless of the student's background. But that response only makes things worse. Students and faculty alike point out that no one questioned the rigorous academic standards when the work was being dismissed, only when it gained public attention. The pressure intensifies when the American Mathematical Society releases a statement. Based on preliminary review by multiple independent mathematicians, Miss Williams' solution to the Riemann-Euler convergence appears to be both correct and innovative. We encourage academic institutions to evaluate student work based on mathematical merit rather than preconceptions about capability. But while the world is debating mathematical bias and academic justice, Aisha Williams is experiencing something far more personal and painful. She's become a symbol, a cause, a hashtag, but she's also a 19-year-old student who just wanted to solve a mathematical problem. The attention is overwhelming. Media requests, interview demands, supporters reaching out, critics questioning everything from her background to her character. Her mother, Patricia, has to take time off work to help manage the chaos. Her grandmother, Miss Ruby, watches the news coverage with a mixture of pride and concern. I knew that baby was special, Miss Ruby tells a local reporter. But I never thought the world would try to punish her for being gifted. And that's exactly what's happening. Instead of celebrating mathematical breakthrough, Aisha finds herself defending her integrity, her intelligence, and her right to academic recognition. She's experiencing what every black person who achieves excellence in predominantly Y. T spaces knows success doesn't bring just opportunity, it brings scrutiny. Dr. Richardson, meanwhile, has gone silent. No interviews, no statements, no classroom appearances. The university has placed him on administrative leave pending an investigation. But the damage to Aisha's academic experience has already been done. Here's the tragedy. A moment that should have been the highlight of her academic career has become a traumatic confrontation with institutional racism. But here's the power. Aisha Williams refuses to be silenced, diminished, or disappeared. What she does next will inspire a generation of young black scholars and change how academic institutions handle black excellence. While the university administration scrambles and Dr. Richardson hides, Aisha Williams makes a decision that will define not just her future, but the future of black students everywhere. She's not going to let this moment be buried under institutional politics and academic procedure. Standing in her dorm room, surrounded by mathematics textbooks and supportive messages from around the world, Aisha does something that takes incredible courage. She decides to speak publicly. Not through university channels, not through official procedures, but directly to the people who have been watching her story unfold. Her roommate, Keisha, watches nervously as Aisha sets up her phone camera. "Girl, you sure about this? The university isn't going to like you going public." Aisha's response reveals everything about her character. "Keisha, I didn't solve that equation for the university. I solved it because I love mathematics. And I'm not going to let anyone make me ashamed of being excellent." That evening, Aisha Williams posts a 15-minute video that will change everything. Not a professional production, just a young woman sitting in her dorm room, speaking truth to power with the kind of clarity that only comes from genuine conviction. "My name is Aisha Williams," she begins, looking directly into the camera with the confidence of someone who knows their worth. 3 days ago, I solved a mathematical equation that had been unsolved for 200 years. Today, I want to talk about what happened next and why it matters to every black student watching this. Her voice is steady, but you can hear the emotion underneath. "I didn't solve the Riemann-Euler convergence problem for attention. I solved it because I saw patterns that others missed. I solved it because mathematics has been my passion since I was 7 years old, calculating recipe ratios at my grandmother's kitchen table." She pauses, and in that pause, you can feel the weight of every black student who's ever had their intelligence questioned, their achievements doubted, their excellence dismissed. But here's what I want you to understand. This isn't just about one equation or one professor or one classroom. This is about a system that can't recognize genius when it doesn't come in the package they expect. This is about institutions that would rather protect their assumptions than celebrate breakthrough discoveries. Aisha continues, her voice growing stronger with each word. "I'm sharing my solution with the world not because I need validation from institutions that have already shown their bias, but because mathematics belongs to everyone. Knowledge belongs to everyone, and excellence deserves recognition regardless of who achieves it." She holds up her composition book, the same worn notebook where she first wrote her solution. "This is where I solved a 200-year-old mystery. Not in a fancy laboratory, not with expensive equipment, not with institutional support. Right here, with a $2 notebook and a mind that refuses to accept limitations." To every young black student watching this, your intelligence is not up for debate. Your capabilities are not determined by other people's expectations. Your brilliance is not conditional on their approval. You are capable of changing the world, even when the world isn't ready to change for you. The video ends with a promise that sends chills down your spine. I'm not done. This is just the beginning. Mathematics has more mysteries and I intend to solve them, with or without institutional support, with or without academic approval, because genius doesn't ask permission, it just creates. Within 6 hours, the video has 500,000 views. Within 24 hours, it's been shared by mathematicians, activists, students, and supporters worldwide. But more importantly, it sparked a movement that will transform how academic institutions handle Black excellence. Here's what happens next. While university administrators debate policy and professors question procedures, the international mathematical community is doing something unprecedented. They're rallying around a 19-year-old Black student with a fierce determination to see justice done. Dr. Amara Akafer from Oxford University posts a detailed video analysis. V spent 15 years working on convergence theory. Miss Williams' approach is not only correct, it's revolutionary. She's opened pathways that will reshape how we understand infinite series for generations. The Fields Medal Institute releases a statement that sends shockwaves through academic circles. Mathematical genius is not confined to traditional academic pathways. Miss Williams' solution represents breakthrough thinking that merits immediate recognition and support. But here's what's really powerful. It's not just individual mathematicians speaking up. Mathematical societies from 12 countries issue a joint statement calling for academic institutions to evaluate work based on merit rather than assumptions about capability. Something extraordinary happens next. Instead of waiting for traditional academic review processes, which could take months or years, the mathematical community creates an unprecedented rapid review system specifically for Aisha's work. 23 leading mathematicians from institutions including MIT, Stanford, Cambridge, and the Sorbonne volunteer to participate in an accelerated peer review. They're not just reviewing the solution, they're making a statement that excellence deserves immediate recognition. Dr. Sarah Chen from Caltech explains their urgency. We're witnessing mathematical history being made, but more importantly, we're witnessing a young scholar being treated unjustly. The mathematical community has a responsibility to protect and promote genuine discovery, regardless of its source. The review process, which normally takes 6 to 12 months, is completed in 72 hours. The verdict is unanimous. Aisha's solution is not only correct, but represents a fundamental advancement in mathematical understanding. Then something happens that's never occurred in mathematical history. The International Mathematical Union extends a personal invitation to Aisha Williams to present her findings at their annual conference, an honor usually reserved for established professors and researchers with decades of experience. But the invitation comes with something even more powerful. A full scholarship offer from the Cambridge Mathematical Institute, complete with research funding and mentorship from world-renowned mathematicians. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, the conference organizer, makes a statement that goes viral in academic circles. Mathematical genius doesn't follow traditional timelines or conventional pathways. Miss Williams has demonstrated the kind of innovative thinking that transforms entire fields of study. We would be honored to support her continued research. The offer includes something unprecedented. Aisha would become the youngest researcher in the Institute's 200-year history, with full autonomy over her research direction and publication rights. But here's where the story takes another turn. Because while the international mathematical community is celebrating Aisha's brilliance, her own university is still conducting an investigation into her work. The contrast is stark and revealing. International institutions are offering her the world, while the institution where she made her discovery is still questioning whether her achievement is legitimate. It's a perfect example of how institutional bias can blind organizations to the excellence right in front of them. What Aisha decides next will determine not just her future, but send a message about how Black excellence responds when institutions fail to recognize their worth. By now, the university administration realizes they're facing more than just a public relations problem. They're facing an institutional crisis that threatens their academic reputation and financial stability. Major donors are calling with concerns. Alumni are expressing outrage on social media. The mathematics department's accreditation is being questioned. And most damaging of all, prospective Black students are publicly stating they won't attend an institution that treats excellence with such obvious bias. The university president, Dr. Margaret Harrison, finds herself in the impossible position of trying to defend the indefensible. How do you explain away the dismissal of a mathematical breakthrough that's been verified by the world's leading experts? Her first attempt at damage control reveals exactly why the institution was unprepared for this moment. The university stands by its rigorous academic standards and thorough review processes. All student work is evaluated according to established protocols. But that statement ignites even more outrage. Students and faculty immediately point out that Dr. Richardson didn't apply rigorous academic standards. He applied assumptions and bias. The work wasn't dismissed because it failed review. It was dismissed before any real review occurred. Something unprecedented begins happening within the university itself. Faculty members start speaking out against our own institution's handling of the situation. Dr. Jennifer Adams from the mathematics department posts an open letter. "I have been a professor here for 22 years, and I have never been more ashamed of our institutional response to genuine academic achievement. Miss Williams accomplished something extraordinary, and instead of celebration, she received suspicion and dismissal." 17 other mathematics professors signed the letter within hours. The philosophy department issues their own statement condemning institutional bias disguised as academic rigor. Even professors from completely unrelated departments are calling for administrative accountability. The Faculty Senate calls an emergency meeting, only the third in the university's 150-year history. The agenda has one item: addressing institutional bias in academic evaluation. It's clear that Aisha's treatment has exposed problems that go far beyond one classroom incident. But the most powerful response comes from the students themselves. What starts as social media outrage transforms into organized activism that threatens to reshape the entire university culture. The Black Student Union organizes a Mathematics for Justice demonstration that draws over 2,000 participants. Students from other universities drive hours to show solidarity. The images are powerful: young people holding signs that read "Genius has no color" and "Recognize excellence everywhere." But this isn't just about Aisha anymore. Students start sharing their own stories of academic bias and institutional discrimination. Pre-med students talk about having their research questioned more rigorously than their white peers. Engineering students describe being assumed to be diversity admits rather than merit scholars. The demonstration becomes a catalyst for broader conversations about how academic institutions identify, support, and celebrate excellence. National media coverage focuses not just on Aisha's mathematical achievement, but on the systemic issues her treatment has revealed. Meanwhile, applications from high-achieving Black students plummet. The university's reputation as a place where excellence is recognized regardless of its source has been permanently damaged. The financial implications become impossible to ignore when major corporate sponsors begin reconsidering their partnerships. The pressure reaches a breaking point when the university's Board of Trustees calls an emergency meeting. For the first time in decades, they're facing a crisis that threatens the institution's fundamental credibility. What they decide next will determine whether this becomes a story of institutional learning or institutional stubbornness. Standing in her dorm room, surrounded by acceptance letters from Cambridge, MIT, Stanford, and a dozen other prestigious institutions, Aisha Williams faces the biggest decision of her young life. She holds in her hands the power to shape not just her future, but the future of Black academic excellence. Her mother, Patricia, drives up from Cleveland for what they both know is a life-changing conversation. Sitting on Aisha's narrow dorm bed, surrounded by mathematical journals and solidarity letters from around the world, they talk about choices, consequences, and the responsibility that comes with being a symbol of change. "Baby," Patricia says quietly, "whatever you decide, I'm proud of you. You've already changed the world. The question now is, how do you want to keep changing it?" Aisha stares at the Cambridge letter, a full scholarship, research freedom, mentorship from Nobel laureates, and the chance to work alongside the world's most brilliant mathematical minds. It's everything she's ever dreamed of academically, but it's also an escape from the institution that failed to recognize her worth. But here's what makes Aisha Williams extraordinary. She's not just thinking about her own future. She's thinking about every Black student who will walk into that differential equations classroom after her. She's thinking about the pattern of excellence being dismissed, overlooked, and driven away from institutions that claim to value brilliance. "If I leave," she tells her mother, "what happens to the next Black student who solves an impossible problem? What happens to the next young person whose genius doesn't fit their expectations?" Patricia nods, understanding immediately. This isn't just about academic opportunity, it's about institutional change. It's about whether excellence can transform the places that fail to recognize it, or whether those places will continue their patterns of bias and dismissal. Aisha spends 3 days in deep reflection. She walks the campus, sits in the library where she first fell in love with advanced mathematics, and visits the classroom where her breakthrough was dismissed. She's not just choosing a university, she's choosing how to use her moment of visibility and power. On a Thursday morning, exactly weeks after solving the Riemann-Euler convergence problem, Aisha Williams calls a press conference. National media, university administrators, fellow students, and mathematical colleagues gather to hear her decision. Standing at the podium with the confidence of someone who has found her purpose, Aisha makes an announcement that surprises everyone. "I am honored by the opportunities offered by Cambridge, MIT, and other prestigious institutions. Their recognition of my work and their commitment to supporting my research means more than I can express. But today, I'm announcing that I will be staying here at this university to complete my undergraduate degree." The room buzzes with confusion and surprise. Why would she stay at an institution that had treated her so poorly? Aisha continues, "I'm staying because change doesn't happen when we leave, it happens when we stay and transform institutions from within. I'm staying because the next Black student who walks into that differential equations classroom deserves better. I'm staying because excellence should be recognized everywhere, not just in places that already know how to see it." Her voice grows stronger. "But I'm staying on my terms. The university has agreed to establish the Williams Institute for Mathematical Innovation, a research center dedicated to identifying and supporting mathematical talent from all backgrounds. They've committed to bias training for all faculty and transparent evaluation processes for student work. The transformation she's negotiated is unprecedented, institutional change driven by student excellence rather than administrative initiative. But her final statement is what makes headlines around the world. Mathematics taught me that the most elegant solutions often come from seeing familiar problems in completely new ways. Today, I'm applying that lesson to academic justice. We don't just solve equations, we solve systems. And some systems need revolutionizing. What happens next at the university is unprecedented in higher education history. Aisha's decision to stay and transform, rather than leave and escape, triggers the most comprehensive examination of academic bias that any major university has ever undertaken. The Williams Institute for Mathematical Innovation becomes the model for how institutions can actively identify and support excellence from all backgrounds. But it's not just a research center. It's a complete reimagining of how academic potential is recognized and nurtured. The Institute's first initiative addresses the problem at its source: implicit bias in classroom interactions. Every faculty member undergoes intensive training on recognizing and interrupting their own assumptions about student capability. The training includes real case studies, including Aisha's classroom experience, to show how bias operates even among well-meaning educators. Dr. Richardson, after months of reflection and counseling, becomes an unexpected advocate for change. His statement to the Faculty Senate is both heartbreaking and hopeful. "I have spent 37 years believing I was free from bias, while my actions demonstrated the opposite." Miss Williams didn't just solve an impossible equation. She revealed an impossible contradiction in my own thinking. I am committed to ensuring this never happens again. But the transformation spreads far beyond one university. Academic institutions across the country begin implementing their own versions of the Williams model. Comprehensive approaches to identifying and supporting mathematical talent regardless of students' backgrounds or institutional expectations. The National Science Foundation announces the Williams Fellowship Program, providing full funding for undergraduate research by students from underrepresented communities. The fellowship explicitly states that recipients are selected based on innovative thinking, rather than traditional academic credentials. Major tech companies start partnering with the Williams Institute to identify and recruit mathematical talent from non-traditional pathways. Google announces that they're specifically seeking graduates who demonstrate the kind of innovative problem-solving that Aisha exemplified. But perhaps most importantly, high schools across the country begin teaching Aisha's solution to the Riemann-Euler convergence problem as part of their advanced mathematics curricula. For the first time in history, students are learning breakthrough mathematics discovered by someone who looks like them, someone who came from circumstances like theirs. The ripple effects extend into spaces no one anticipated. Medical schools begin examining their own biases in evaluating research by students of color. Law schools implement new approaches to recognizing innovative legal thinking. Business schools create programs specifically designed to identify entrepreneurial genius from non-traditional backgrounds. But the most powerful impact is in young Black students themselves. Social media floods with videos of students solving complex problems, sharing their own mathematical discoveries, and refusing to accept limitations on their intellectual potential. 8-year-old Marcus Johnson from Detroit posts a video explaining his solution to a geometry problem that had stumped his teacher. 15-year-old Zara Williams, no relation to Aisha, from rural Alabama, shares her breakthrough in statistical analysis that catches the attention of data scientists at major corporations. The hashtag #YoungBlackGenius trends worldwide as students share their intellectual achievements and academic ambitions. What Aisha started in one classroom has become a global movement of young Black minds refusing to hide their brilliance. Dr. Neil deGrasse Tyson posts a video response that goes viral, What we're witnessing is the democratization of genius recognition. When institutions fail to see excellence, the community steps up. When traditional gatekeepers fail, new pathways emerge. This is how intellectual revolutions begin. But the story is far from over. Aisha Williams is now in her junior year, and she's just announced her next mathematical target, a problem that's been unsolved for even longer than the Riemann-Euler convergence. Here's what she's planning next. 2 years after that life-changing Tuesday morning, Aisha Williams has transformed from an unknown undergraduate into one of the most respected mathematical minds of her generation. But what's most remarkable isn't her growing list of academic achievements. It's how she's using her platform to revolutionize who gets recognized as intellectually gifted. The Williams Institute has identified and supported over 200 mathematically gifted students from underrepresented communities. 12 of them have already published breakthrough research. 3 have been accepted to PhD programs at top universities. And all of them cite Aisha's example as the reason they refuse to hide their intellectual capabilities. But Aisha's current project is her most ambitious yet. She's working on the Goldbach conjecture, a mathematical mystery that's remained unsolved for over 280 years. If solved, it would fundamentally change how we understand prime numbers and their relationships. People ask me why I keep tackling impossible problems, Aisha says in a recent interview. But I've learned that impossible is just another word for not yet imagined. Every breakthrough starts with someone willing to see familiar problems in completely new ways. What's happening now goes beyond individual achievement. It's a systematic transformation of how mathematical talent is identified and nurtured. The Williams model has been adopted by over 150 universities, and the results are revolutionary. Mathematical breakthroughs by students of color have increased by 340% at participating institutions. More importantly, the retention rate of Black students in STEM fields has dramatically improved when they feel their intellectual contributions are valued and recognized. 10-year-old Destiny Chen from Oakland has already solved 3 problems that stumped her high school mathematics teacher. 13-year-old Elijah Thompson from rural Mississippi has developed a new approach to fractal geometry that's caught the attention of university researchers. These aren't isolated cases anymore. They're part of a movement that's redefining what mathematical genius looks like and where it can be found. The Williams Institute tracks over 1,000 young mathematical talents, providing mentorship, resources, and most importantly, recognition that their abilities are valuable and worthy of investment. The impact has spread internationally in ways no one anticipated. The Cambridge Mathematical Institute has established exchange programs specifically designed to bring students identified through the Williams model to work with international researchers. Universities in Nigeria, Ghana, and Kenya have implemented their own versions of the program, recognizing mathematical talent that had been overlooked by traditional academic systems. The first international conference on democratic mathematical recognition brought together over 500 researchers and 200 student mathematicians from 47 countries. But perhaps the most powerful change is cultural. Mathematical achievement by young Black students is no longer treated as surprising or anomalous. It's expected and celebrated. Parents are sharing videos of their children solving complex problems. Teachers are learning to recognize and nurture mathematical thinking in all its forms. The latest data shows that mathematical competition participation by Black students has increased by 280% since Aisha's breakthrough. More importantly, their success rate in these competitions has skyrocketed because they're entering with confidence rather than doubt about their abilities. Dr. Aisha Williams, she completed her bachelor's degree summa cum laude and is now pursuing her PhD while continuing her research, reflects on the transformation. We didn't just solve one equation. We solved a system that had been limiting mathematical potential for generations. And we're just getting started. But here's what's most exciting about this story. It's not over. Aisha is now 21 years old, and she's just announced that she believes she's close to solving the Goldbach conjecture. If she succeeds, she'll become the youngest person in history to solve multiple centuries-old mathematical mysteries. Here's what happens next in this incredible journey. 6 months ago, Dr. Aisha Williams, yes, she's now Dr. Williams, having completed her PhD in record time, stood before the International Mathematical Congress with an announcement that sent shockwaves through the mathematical world. "I believe I have solved the Goldbach conjecture," she said simply, and then proceeded to present a solution that had eluded mathematical giants for nearly 3 centuries. The verification process took 4 months and involved 67 mathematicians from 23 countries. The result was unanimous. Dr. Williams had indeed cracked another impossible problem, using an approach so innovative that it's already being taught in graduate programs worldwide. But here's what makes this achievement even more remarkable. The solution came to her while she was mentoring a 14-year-old student at the Williams Institute. "I was explaining prime number relationships to young Marcus," she recalls, "and suddenly I saw the pattern that everyone else had missed. Sometimes breakthrough thinking comes from teaching as much as from researching." The transformation that began in that differential equations classroom is now complete and permanent. The university that once questioned Aisha's capabilities now houses one of the world's most prestigious mathematical research centers, bearing her name and carrying forward her mission. The Williams Institute for Mathematical Innovation has become a pilgrimage site for educators worldwide who want to learn how to identify and nurture intellectual potential in all its forms. The bias training programs developed there are now mandatory at over 300 universities across 6 countries. Dr. Richardson, the professor who initially dismissed Aisha's work, has become one of the most effective advocates for recognizing student excellence. His transformation story is taught in education programs as an example of how institutions and individuals can change when confronted with their own limitations. Miss Williams, Dr. Williams, didn't just solve mathematical problems, he reflects. She solved human problems. She solved the problem of how we see each other, how we recognize worth, how we celebrate achievement. That may be her greatest contribution to human knowledge. But perhaps the most beautiful part of this story is how it's inspiring the next generation of mathematical minds. The students who were mentored through the Williams Institute are now making their own breakthroughs. Marcus Chen, the student who first recorded Aisha's classroom dismissal, is now a doctoral candidate in computer science, developing algorithms that could revolutionize artificial intelligence. Sarah Martinez, who recognized the brilliance of Aisha's original solution, has become a prominent researcher in mathematical modeling for climate science. And the young students who were inspired by Aisha's example, they're now solving their own impossible problems. Destiny Chen, now 13, has just published her first research paper on advanced geometric principles. Elijah Thompson, 16, has been accepted to PhD programs at 5 major universities. The pattern that began with one 19-year-old refusing to accept limitations on her intellectual potential has become a movement that's redefining how mathematical genius is recognized, nurtured, and celebrated. Dr. Williams, now 24 and one of the most respected mathematicians of her generation, continues her research while maintaining her commitment to ensuring that intellectual excellence is recognized wherever it appears. Her latest project involves training AI systems to identify mathematical potential in non-traditional problem-solving approaches, essentially teaching computers to recognize genius the way the Williams Institute taught humans to recognize it. But as remarkable as her mathematical achievements have been, her greatest legacy may be the thousands of young minds who now approach impossible problems with confidence rather than doubt, knowing that their intellectual potential is limited only by their imagination, not by others' expectations. Now, if you've stayed with me for the past hour and 45 minutes, you understand that this isn't really a story about mathematics. This is a story about recognition, respect, and the revolutionary power of refusing to be invisible. Aisha Williams didn't just solve impossible equations, she solved an impossible situation. She took a moment of institutional failure and transformed it into systemic change. She took personal pain and converted it into community power. She took individual excellence and made it a catalyst for collective advancement. But here's what I want you to really understand. This story is happening in classrooms, laboratories, and research centers every single day. Right now, there's a young black mind solving problems that others consider impossible. Right now, there's brilliance being overlooked because it doesn't fit institutional expectations. The question isn't whether this genius exists. It's whether we have the courage to recognize it, the wisdom to nurture it, and the commitment to ensure it's never dismissed again. This story applies to every field where excellence is undervalued because of who demonstrates it. In medical research, where breakthrough treatments are dismissed because they come from unexpected sources. In engineering, where innovative solutions are overlooked because they don't follow traditional approaches. In business, where revolutionary ideas are ignored because they originate from non-traditional backgrounds. The Williams model isn't just about mathematics, it's about creating systems that recognize potential wherever it appears. It's about building institutions that celebrate breakthrough thinking rather than gatekeeping access to recognition. Every organization, every institution, every community needs to ask itself, how many Aisha Williams have we overlooked? How many breakthrough discoveries have we dismissed? How many revolutionary ideas have we ignored because they came from sources we didn't expect? The cost of institutional bias isn't just individual, it's civilizational. When we fail to recognize genius, we slow human progress. When we dismiss excellence, we limit our collective potential. As I researched this story, I kept thinking about my own experiences in academic and professional spaces. How many times have I witnessed excellence being questioned rather than celebrated? How many times have I seen brilliance dismissed because it didn't fit conventional expectations? But more importantly, how many times have I been guilty of the same assumptions that Dr. Richardson initially made? How many times have I failed to recognize genius because I was looking for it in the wrong places or from the wrong people? This story challenges all of us to examine our own biases, our own assumptions about where excellence can be found and who deserves recognition. It forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about how institutions operate and how individual prejudices become systemic barriers. But it also offers hope. If one 19-year-old student can transform an entire university, if one moment of courage can create nationwide change, if one person's refusal to be invisible can make thousands of others visible, then change is not only possible, it's inevitable. The Williams model proves that excellence, when properly recognized and supported, doesn't just achieve individual success, it transforms entire systems. It doesn't just solve immediate problems, it prevents future ones from occurring. Dr. Aisha Williams didn't just solve the Riemann-Euler convergence problem and the Goldbach conjecture. She solved the problem of how we see each other, how we value each other, and how we support each other's potential. And that may be the most important equation she's ever solved. So here's my question for you, and I want you to really think about this. What are you going to do with this story? Are you going to watch it, feel inspired for a moment, and then return to business as usual? Or are you going to let it change how you see excellence, how you recognize potential, and how you support the brilliant minds around you? Because this story isn't just about Dr. Aisha Williams. It's about every young person watching this video who has been told their dreams are too big, their goals are unrealistic, their potential is limited by other people's expectations. This story is about every teacher, professor, and educator who has the power to recognize or dismiss the next breakthrough discovery. It's about every employer who decides whether to hire based on potential or just credentials. It's about every parent who chooses to nurture their child's intellectual curiosity or redirect it toward more practical pursuits. You have more power to create change than you realize. Every time you recognize someone's potential, you're applying the Williams model. Every time you question your own assumptions about who can achieve excellence, you're participating in this revolution. The Williams Institute has now tracked over 5,000 mathematically gifted students from underrepresented communities. Their success rate in advanced mathematics has increased by over 400% when they receive proper recognition and support. But here's what's even more remarkable. Their innovations are solving real-world problems that affect all of our lives. Students identified through the Williams model have developed more efficient algorithms for medical imaging, created mathematical models that improve sustainable energy systems, and designed computational approaches that enhance internet security. When we invest in recognizing excellence everywhere, we all benefit from the discoveries that result. This isn't charity or social responsibility. This is strategic investment in human potential. When institutions adopt the Williams model, they don't just become more equitable, they become more innovative, more successful, and more impactful. The companies that hire Williams Institute graduates report higher innovation rates and more breakthrough discoveries. The universities that implement Williams model programs attract more talented students and produce more groundbreaking research. I want to leave you with a challenge that Dr. Williams gave me when I interviewed her for this story. She said, "The next impossible problem isn't mathematical, it's social. The next equation we need to solve is how to create a world where every brilliant mind is recognized, supported, and celebrated regardless of who they are or where they come from." That's the equation we all need to work on. That's the problem that requires all of our intellectual resources to solve. So here's what I want you to do. First, look around your own life, your own workplace, your own community. Who are the brilliant minds that might be overlooked? Who are the innovative thinkers who need recognition and support? How can you apply the Williams model in your own sphere of influence? Second, share this story. Not just because it's inspiring, but because it's instructional. It shows exactly how individual courage can create institutional change. It demonstrates how recognizing one person's excellence can unlock potential in thousands of others. Third, demand better from the institutions in your life. Whether it's schools, universities, workplaces, or community organizations, insist that they have systems in place to recognize and nurture excellence wherever it appears. Dr. Aisha Williams is now 24 years old. She solved two of mathematics' greatest mysteries. She's transformed how academic institutions recognize student potential. She's inspired thousands of young minds to pursue their intellectual dreams. And she's just getting started. When I asked her what she wants people to remember about her story, she said something that gave me chills. "I want them to remember that impossible is just another word for not yet imagined. Every limitation is temporary. Every barrier can be overcome. every system can be transformed, and every person watching this has the potential to solve problems that the world considers impossible. That's the message I want you to take from this story. You have more potential than you realize. The people around you have more brilliance than institutions recognize. And together, we can solve problems that seem impossible, including the problem of creating a world where excellence is celebrated everywhere it appears. If this story moved you, if it challenged you, if it inspired you to see potential in new places, hit that subscribe button. We need to keep telling these stories, keep celebrating these achievements, and keep demanding that institutions recognize excellence in all its forms.